Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Not Another Tooling podcast with myself, Austin Pearson, and my wonderful co-host, Mr. Matt Malcolm. How are you today, sir?
I'm grand. I'm grand today. Yeah, it's a bit miserable outside, but so be it.
It is, although it's definitely taken a bit of an upturn recently. My Tesla app is telling me that I'm using less and less from the grid and more from solar power, which is very cool, but I digress. Today, we've got a pretty packed agenda because we're going to talk about 5 things that organizations could start doing today to improve IT operations. And this isn't rip out all your systems and start again.
Why not? Why not?
We might talk about that maybe as one of the points, but they're going to be all over the show. Some of them technical, some of the business. So stay with us if one of the two of the points aren't quite for you, and I'm sure there will be some points that are for you. So I'm going to start off with my very first one, which we are both very passionate about, is aligning what you're doing in IT operations with what's happening in the business. And this is really all about culture more than anything else. The number of times that I go in and talk to IT operations folks and they have no idea how what they do on their day-to-day job affects the business is crazy. So I'm sure you've done plenty of stuff like this, but running workshops where you bring a C-level exec in to meet the IT operations folks and say, what are we trying to achieve as a company? And it might be something really simple like we are trying to sell more products over the next 2 years and raise our share price. So every time then something doesn't go right in IT, then we have a problem and we don't sell as many things and our share price goes down. And that means that for you guys, you employees, your shares are worth less, or hopefully it's something a bit more meaningful than that. And actually the things they're selling make people's lives better. And therefore, if they can fix incidents quicker, they can make people's lives better, or something like that. I'm sure you've got some better examples, Matt, but just that bringing people on the journey so they're all aligned to the business priorities is such a big one that people miss, I think.
Yeah, so I'm thinking like real working scenarios as well. If I was to phrase it in a sentence, visibility of the vision, right? So there might be a business goal, but it might be historic now, but that was not generally publicized back down to technical level. And there's always this gap, and we talked about this on many sessions already. But even if then that session has taken place, what about the active knowledge? What about the active understanding of this is still the goal, this is still the activity? So that transparency of like what this is up here, the goal, and then like who's doing what and whatever else, and the connections through there. But having that as almost like an organic, alive, real-time thing, because where we've found for sure is people end up doing something because they was told at the time, or it's a process or whatever. They carry on doing it, but there's never any checkpoint to understand if it's still meeting this objective because they probably don't even know what it is. So that visibility of the goal and that keeping that vision, that gap between the technology bit and the business bit, keeping that link fed and watered so people know I'm still doing the right thing. Yeah, that should still be taking place. This thing I'm doing, this report, this whatever, is still serving its purpose.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And it makes a huge cultural difference if everybody is pulling together to do the same thing, because you so often find a bit of protectionism in various bits of businesses of like, hey, I'm over here and I run my little tool thing over here and this is what I do. And they don't want to engage or move from that because they don't understand what they're trying to do as a business. And the more you can bring people together, the better. And Google, the great example of that, the way they run their teams, and all of those teams have like a mission statement of how they're helping the bigger mission. And yeah, it does amazing. So we could talk about that for hours, but we've got to do 5 things. So number 2 is one from you, automation.
Yeah. So consider automation, I think, is the best way to frame it. And that isn't I'm sure there's a very deep conversation on automation as a whole, but it isn't necessarily the more traditional orchestration around automation of the estate, the infrastructure, wherever infrastructure sits. It's generally all things automation, business process. Is it human activity with some assisted automation, or is it totally running in isolation? All of the touch points of a business process, whether it's a technical doing something, the movement of something, or the interaction, what degrees of it could be in scope for automation. I think the main thing is, though, when we're looking to consider automation, it isn't the more archaic way of fully understanding the business process and then applying the automation. Where I've seen it most effective is going, there's something over here, can we automate it? No matter if it's good or bad process, it might be real shit, it might be terrible, but can we automate it? Right, that problem is just an automated problem, it's gone. So I think considering automation and just throwing it in, sometimes in a flippant manner, will be more effective than trying to understand what's going on before applying automation. But yeah, the overarching point I was trying to make is consider automation at all ends of the spectrum.
I totally agree, and that fits quite nicely with number 1 and what's going to be number 3, because number 1, if people are looking, they understand the culture, where the company is trying to go. They're always looking for areas for automation. It helps people enjoy their job a bit more, because if they've got potential to automate the rubbish bits, but if they're doing that in conjunction with understanding what we're trying to do as a company, then everybody wins. And I think there's, like you say, there's so much opportunity for automation, and that leads us nicely into number 3.
Can I just briefly interrupt? Sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
Automation, that one of the main problems that I would see is people just start it too late. They've got a new tool, whatever it is, they do whatever, and they expect it's like this maturity step, and then they automate. Maybe just look straight from day one. I'll automate that. I'll go for it. We'll implement this module, whatever the thing is, I'm going to automate that. That would change the game for a lot of organizations that actually get to use the tools to full functionality versus, we haven't got the time, effort, and we've moved along now, we've got a new process. Do it at the beginning. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I agree. And something that could really help with that is number 3, which is spend a bit of time. It's not a lot of time, this at all, going through your last 6 months incident data to see where there's some possible easy wins for you, or at least where you should be prioritizing things. So yeah, a great example tied nicely into your automation piece is you might find that 20% of your incidents in data center and cloud world were fixed by Windows service restarts. Right, really simple bit of automation that you could run and fix that problem, take a load of time and cost out of what you're doing. But so often we don't go and look through this data because we might not know how to, we might not have the time, and we're always thinking about the things that have been on fire recently. So almost every new engagement I have with a client, they go, hey, we need to fix this problem. And it's been a problem for like the last month or something. And when we go and look through the incident data, I go, okay, you've had that problem for the last month, and yeah, you've had a couple of outages and it's not great, and yeah, you need to fix that. However, you're spending 30% of your time pinging devices, doing trace routes and running OSPF queries, and you're paying your people to do that, and then they're getting bored and they're leaving and yada yada. Why not start with some of that basic stuff? And I'm sure there's plenty more examples, right? And if any of you are struggling with that on the podcast and want to reach out to Matt or I, we would be more than happy to help you with that process, with that analysis. It's not difficult. You can literally send us a spreadsheet, and a couple of days later, we can send you back some magic and walk you through it. Matt, what's been your experience in that space?
Yeah, certainly not everybody looks to the left. In my days when I was badly trading, I never looked left enough. So I never really saw what was emerging. So looking back for sure, talk about instant data. That's like, it's going to depend on how well and how effective the organizations are actually capturing that instant data. We're kind of hopeful that it's categorized in a way that it's usable, consistent enough. Doesn't have to be perfect, because we're in a bit of a fishing exercise at the moment, aren't we? We're trying to understand what has taken place. So I think there's a dependency on how well categorized or how well captured those incidents are, or even events, because I suppose the scenario is we're going on this fishing exercise to work out what's hot, what's not. It might not just be instance, it might be other repositories, event information, general analytics that are available in this state. This is where I wouldn't condone it straight away, but if you've got the ability to implement or have at your availability some analytical tool, whatever it is, various vendors, these are great things to put in this state and pull from multiple sources, your instance stuff, your event stuff, your system stuff, logs, whatever else, because then your picture of seeing how bad or how long the problem's been going for is more greater versus just trying to focus just on instance, which we're hopeful that people are categorizing and logging all of it, but there's always going to be some things that are missed. One extra bit around just the so many of this type of thing, and this is a good consideration when you're going through what do I bother spending my time on, but I reckon is missed, I don't know, 3 or 4 times out of 5, is the length of activities. Time elapsed, time effort. You might have 1,000 of these or 100 of these, but the 100 of these actually takes 3 times longer than the 1,000 of these. So it's like understanding the volume of the thing and then the effort and the time elapsed. Use those basic metrics, and then you know what to go after.
Absolutely spot on. You're perfect. That's a very good way of describing what I was trying to say. Everyone thinks about the P1s and the P2s, but actually it's in the P3s and P4s that a lot of time has elapsed and takes, multiple. You have so many more of them that you could automate or do stuff with. So that is perfect. Okay, right. Technical capability reviews.
So yeah, I mean, I know we've talked multiple times about ripping systems out and putting new ones in. I don't want to get into the habit thinking that is the only answer that we've got, but are your requirements being met with what you've got? Like, actually, this is what I needed last month, last year, last quarter. Can I still do that? And my projected forecast of the things I need to do with the capability I've got? And it might not mean total rip out territory. We're not necessarily advocating that. It might mean augmentation of, I can do this now, but actually there's an unused feature here. Maybe it's not even licensable. It just needs to be switched on. But am I getting the right level of output from the capability I've got in the estate, or do I need to consider more? Because where we see the shortfall is we can't make things better because we're not introducing the right capability. Then people try and shoehorn the capability in a manual process, an X or Y or Z, whatever else, other than actually just looking at the technical capability and going, it can do, can't do, I need something else, I don't need. Like that basic level of step there will keep that IT operational effectiveness moving forwards just by going, do I have the capabilities right now? But that's a good thing, actually. That's where I've seen more over the last 5 years or so. It used to be like a product, a tool, a thing, probably branded as well. Can we do it with X or Y or Z? Whereas like the maturing space is more around what capability can I deliver? What capability do I need? When we talk about point number 1 around that goals, vision, etc., at some point when we get into the technical weeds, we should be thinking about that technical or business capability. So that would be very clear for the organizations that are doing that level of activity, like the capability. Looking at it like that, looking from that point of view, that's an easy way to go, are we going to get better in our IT operations? Well, have we got the right capabilities in place?
Yeah, I'd absolutely spot on. And that, like you say, really goes with that first one. And because you look at a lot of capabilities that clients have, and I see this on a regular basis, that they made some decisions quite often 15, 20 years ago on capability, and they've almost been stuck with that, and they don't think about what are they trying to do as a business, and do those capabilities match that anymore? Because guess what, their business is completely different to where it was 15, 20 years ago when they made those capability decisions. And so they probably need to start, at the very least, reviewing it. So that's a really good shout. Okay, and then the final one, which is a practical one, which so often people don't do, but we touched on this a little bit in our logging podcast that we did a little bit back, which is having a bit of a weekly practice, which might be as simple as tuning things, or it might be turning things off that you don't need monitoring or logging. And I think that's where we got to with logging, was actually we just chuck so much into logging tools that we then just create all this noise, and we never really get anywhere with it. But it's pretty much the same in the monitoring space. You have one problem somewhere, and then somebody switches 57 things on, and then they never get switched off again, and you have all of this noise. And just having a regular practice of, ideally weekly, but it could be bi-weekly, of looking through, okay, what is causing all our noise right now? Do we need it? Can we switch some of it off? I think is incredibly valuable.
I'm just thinking the scenario, like, definitely you must have come across, like, we ain't going to turn that off. It's working. We're not going to restart this. It's doing its job. Don't pull the plug. Don't restart it. Don't whatever, because genuine concern around what might or might not happen when it comes back up. So what do you do in those scenarios? What do you do in those scenarios where recommendation is a bit of a cleanse, so to speak? I'm sure there's some other good words for it, but they're like, this is working right now. Like, it might be noisy, but it's working. What do you do?
I would say go back to our third suggestion, which is going to look through your incident data, and then you could pull out for that. Let's say it's an application, and you could say, okay, what incidents have we had for that application in the last 6 months? Right, did we need all of that data for those incidents? Oh, actually, we looked at those 3 things, and yet we're collecting 48 metrics from those bits. So let's try it and see how we go. We know what the impact is going to be, and we know what we've turned off, right? So if we get in trouble, then we can definitely turn those things back on. But it will also have, a lot of the time, have a cost benefit, particularly in the logging space, and with what we do in with things like public cloud monitoring tools as well. So you could save a bit of money doing that, but it's more the noise of just all of the events that are coming through that are then creating incidents that people are looking at and going, oh, we don't really need to do anything with this, yada, yada, yada. That it's just complete waste of time, in my experience.
I think there's definitely a degree of cultural spin on it, because where I see like better, let's call it better, is, or maybe it's not worse, that notion of like that weekly or periodic cleanse and just checking things are greased. From a monolithic application point of view, rarely do you see that as being a standard activity. It's very much a reactive thing. It's broken, it's X, it's Y, I triage, I do my stuff. But in the newer world of activity, when we're creating complex services with microservices and essentially elements of the architecture that aren't built in the same structured way, that's where I see a good degree, most of our automation, a good degree of people doing that. Well, we don't need it, bring it down, bring it up, bring it down, bring it up, bring it down. Almost inherently pushing that as a standard way of working, because the nature of the applications built how they are almost forces people to go through that. They have to build it like that so those processes can work. They have to build it so it can be spun up, spun down, broken, rebuilt, just by the nature of it. So there's almost a cultural element where the newer guys and girls are a little bit better than the older ones. But the caveat there is there's a lot of things we can turn on and spin up and et cetera over here that is sometimes getting missed. Like maybe it hasn't gone through the relevant stage gates of how we bring it up, how we bring it down, how we mitigate it, how we quiet the estates. That definitely takes place, and that's why everyone's going crazy, emptying their pockets with code, right? Because stuff is proliferating. That wouldn't happen. I saw something recently, I forget who the company was, and it was posted on LinkedIn, and it was talking about they're making an active plan to regress from cloud into their own data center again. And elements of it is around cost control. Well, if you need to spin up really quick, well, remember, you got to go and order memory. You got to go and order memory. You got to go and get it. Someone's going to go and deliver it. They're going to go and install it. That's a headache. But imagine implementing. I know it's not the case necessarily these days, but imagine having that barrier at the moment. That crazy spend, because there's some companies that probably don't really even want to acknowledge what's been spent in cloud, because it's just there, it's working. So the original cost saving and how great it would be, Anyway, slightly off topic that was, but I thought it was interesting article I read around their plan to move back to their own hosting was to manage it better.
Yep.
Ironic.
Yeah, absolutely. That is definitely a good subject for another episode, I think, because I'm seeing plenty of that over the years and still happening. So really interesting. So, okay, wonderful. Well, we have talked about 5 things that you could start doing today to improve IT operations. They were, number 1, get somebody from your business in to talk to IT operations to make sure that everybody understands how their job impacts the organization, so you can start moving better towards the business goals. Number 2, start turning on automation when you can. Don't necessarily wait to go through a huge process to do that. You can just turn some stuff on, see if it works. It'll really help. Number 3 was go mine your last 6 months incident data and go and have a look for easy wins, or at least priorities that you can set for improvement in IT operations, and reach out to Matt or I if you need help with that. The next one was do some technical capability reviews, because your capability may not be what you need as a business after you understand what you're trying to do as a business. And the final one was have a weekly or bi-weekly practice of trying to tune events and logging and reduce the noise that you are dealing with. Have I forgotten anything?
No, we're all good.
Brilliant. Wonderful. Right. There was a lot in that session. Thank you very much, everybody, for watching. If you've got any questions, or if you've got any comments or some things that you've done in your IT operations department that have made a really big difference that we could include in one of our future episodes like this, or even if you want to come on and talk about what you've done and something that's been successful, then put something in the comments. We'll get in touch, and we definitely plan to have future visitors to our podcast.
You sure do. Well, lining up.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you very much, Matt. I'll see you on your continued never-ending walk again in a couple of weeks.
See you in a bit.
Take care.
Bye.